hello, and welcome to this special edition of Focus on Liberia. That's our midweek edition of Focus on Liberia. We're having a panel discussion on the coronavirus, that's COVID-19, that's the coronavirus disease. And so we brought a panel together to discuss this. Keep tuned, share the video, invite a friend, and we're going to jump right into it in a minute.
Let everybody hear a sound. Let everybody say,
Once again, I want to say welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is a special midweek edition of Focus on Liberia. We are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. Well, most of us are working from home because of the coronavirus, which is spreading. That's why it's called a pandemic. So we've brought together a panel to discuss the coronavirus from various backgrounds. First, we have Mr. Cyrus Doe, a nurse practitioner, joining us from Texas. Cyrus, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting
me. And I will come back to you to say a little bit about yourself. Next, we have Dr. Heaven DeShield.
Thank you.
Doc, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Glad to be with you.
Great. And Dr. DeShield is biotech. That is how you say that, Doc?
Biochemist.
A biochemist.
Yeah, biochemist with a law background also.
Right. Okay. Oh wow. And so the biochemist, they are the one in the drug business. So maybe we can get a cure from him tonight. Next, a working professional who's right now working from home. She's going to tell us how we cope. That's Telvina Cole. Telvina, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Glad to be on.
Good. Last but not the least, we have a psychotherapist who say, okay, how do we deal with the anxiety associated with this coronavirus? That's Dave. Dave, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you. So we want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. Coronavirus is serious, and we brought this panel together so that we can discuss it. So we have Dave is coming for this, maybe the second or third time. So let me start with those who are joining us for the first time on Focus on Liberia to say a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the discussion on the coronavirus discussion tonight. So let me go back to Mr. Cyrus Doe. Mr. Doe, once again, welcome to Focus on Liberia and something brief about yourself.
Thank you. I'm Cyrus Doe. I've been in healthcare for about 17 years. The longest of my experience has been in the emergency department. I am a nurse practitioner. I have a master's degree and a master's degree in nursing and a postmaster's in emergency trauma nursing. And so at the moment, I am going on 3.5 years working as a nurse practitioner in the emergency department. To this discussion, hopefully I bring on some healthcare views and pointers about the coronavirus spread and measures to control or prevent, yourself from contracting the virus.
Thank you. Let me go to Telvina Cole. And when I introduce you as a working professional, somebody is asking, who is a working professional? Are the rest not working? Let's talk about that. So Telvina is working from home right now. So Telvina, a little bit about yourself and what you bring to the discussion.
My name is Telvina Cole. I'm a mother of 2 children. I live in Texas as well. So that's it about me. I'm a working professional. This is not one thing that I like to do, to talk about myself. I struggle with that. So yes, I'll take that title. To the discussion, I just wanted to talk about some self-care tips that we can do at home. We know that the discussion about the coronavirus, it's everywhere, in our inboxes, on the internet, in our daily conversations. And we just wanted to talk about some things that we can do at home just to keep our mind sane and to reduce our stress. These are everyday things, and I just wanted to share that with the group today.
Thank you, Tavina, our working professional. Well, Gakon Moore doesn't like that. Gakon, you got to live with it.
Kaiko can look me up on LinkedIn and he can find out
Right.
more about me. Yeah.
Okay. Let me go to Dr. DeShiel. Doc?
So Harvey DeShiel. My background is in, have a PhD in biochemistry. I also have a law background as far as relevancy to the subject matter. I also run a small biotech company. Our company is developing 2 FDA cleared products to address certain aspects of septic shock and also shock due to blood loss. So I have the legal background as well as the scientific background, and also if you would note that one of the features of this coronavirus is that there's 3 actually. So pneumonia, and then something called ARDS, which is acute respiratory distress syndrome, and then also septic shock. So those are the 3 main things that are affected, that are impacting patients once they get infected with the disease. So I am familiar with septic shock because that's one of the FDA phase 2 product that we are developing is meant to elevate blood pressure in septic shock patients. That's one of the reasons people die from septic shock. So I bring that, that background, as well as, just if people have just general questions about, what sort of tests are being done. I can speak to that. I can also discuss, what are the treatment options out there, what's being developed. So basically, you're going to have certain drugs and vaccines, right? Those are the 2 basically primary categories of products that are going to be used to treat this disease.
Thank you. Last but not the least, we'll go to Mr. Dave Jha. Dave, something about yourself and what you bring to the discussion.
Oh, again, as you said, my name is Dave Jha. I reside in the state of Pennsylvania, specifically in Philadelphia, where I work as a psychotherapist. I have a master's degree from LaSalle University. I'm licensed in the state, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, to provide psychotherapy to those who need that. So I bring to this discussion a background in psychology, which largely has to do with our thought processing, our emotions, our reactions. And I believe that I'll be of help to this conversation as we find ourselves in a state of panic, in a state of anxiety. So we will need a little bit of psychotherapy to see how we deal with this situation that we find ourselves in. So thanks for inviting me, and I'm looking forward to a very fruitful discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's start with the first question, and that will go to the medical persons here on the panel. What is coronavirus 2019? What are the different names of it? Where and how, this virus originates? Let me start with Cyrus.
Well, coronavirus, COVID, COVID, so CO, corona, VI, virus, D, disease 19. Coronavirus 2019 is just a nomenclature and has to do with the appearance of the virus as well. Originated in Wuhan, China, it is believed, according to the World Health Organization, is believed to have been transmitted from an animal that started to infect humans. So coronavirus has been around for a long, long time. There are common viruses. There are different strains of the coronavirus that affect human beings. It affects us. It's part of the respiratory panel. Like if you run labs, you have. I wrote it down. Let me refer to my notes really quick. So the common ones are the alpha, like 2 alpha coronaviruses. One is 2.2 9E, and then the other one is NL63. The two beta coronaviruses are OC43 and HKU1. Those are ones that are similar to the influenza virus that will cause just the same, influenza symptoms that we experience from time to time. So it's been around for quite a long time, but this particular coronavirus, COVID-19, has, as recently as December 2019, began in China and is now spreading across, causing what we now are terming as, or what the World Health Organization is terming as, a pandemic.
Okay, great. Dr. DeShiel?
Yeah, so basically the coronavirus, it's sort of, there's like the gentleman said, SARS, it's a group of viruses that have a particular structure. They have a crown structure. So if you've heard of MERS and SARS, all of those are coronaviruses. So most people have heard of those viruses before. I think the primary difference is here with this one, with the CV-19, abbreviation for coronavirus, COVID-19, is that the infection rate seems extraordinarily high. So whether or not that results in fatalities, that's, the people can argue. You can say, for example, with Ebola, the fatality rate was much higher. That's true. But it wasn't infecting as many people as this virus could infect, right? It's sort of saying, 3%. Right now there's a consensus that the fatality rate is something like 3%. So basically 3% globally of most of people that get this will pass away. But if you have 3% of a high number, then obviously it doesn't matter, right? If I have 3% of a billion or 3% of 500,000 versus 40% of only 100,000, you can see that the 3% could end up being more impactful. So it's a little bit misleading for people to try to downplay this virus by saying the fatality rate is much lower than Ebola. Fatality rate may be lower, but the number of people could be much higher. So in that case, it could end up worse than Ebola.
Oh, wow. So before we go to other panelists, let's talk about, the spread, how people contact it, and how we can prevent it, just briefly, because a lot of information is out there. How is this diagnosed? How is it spread? How is it, and how can it be prevented?
Well, it is spread through droplets. So an infected person coughs or sneezes into the air. Matter of fact, the droplets can remain suspended in the air for up to 4 hours. Though some of them will eventually fall, or most of them do fall, but the droplets can stay suspended in the air for up to 4 hours. So as we walk into, whatever environment that an infected person was in, those droplets can get on our clothes, on our cell phones, if we're in stores, on fruits, on different objects. So those viruses can stay on, for example, on our cell phones that are made out of copper, as far as we know, they can stay on there for up to 4 hours. On other harder substances like a cardboard, 24 hours or even more. And on plastic or metal surfaces, they can even stay the longest, 2 to 3 days. And as we move across and touch those things or inhale the air, then we come into contact with those by either touching, orifices that lead to, epithelial membranes in our body, like our eyes, our nose, and our mouth. That's how we can become infected with the virus when we do get in contact with them. The foremost, a primary way to prevent yourself from contracting this is by, staying isolated. But because it's droplet, it's in the air, there's no way you can stay isolated from the air that you breathe. And so if you have to get out in the street, then, wear a mask, or coming home, washing your hands. So hand hygiene is primarily the most important way, to do it, and to avoid getting yourself infected. Cleaning your hands as often as possible for up to 20 seconds. Cleaning surfaces in your home, pretty much everything that you're going to put your hands on, and avoid touching your face. For as long as you avoid touching your face, your eyes, and your nose, and avoid close contact. So very repeatedly, if I may say, isolating yourself from sick people and avoiding, the easier means of exposure to that is the way you can, prevent yourself from contracting this virus.
Thank you. Now we are inside the panic has spread, and we can talk more about the health side. But I want to bring in the psychotherapist. Now we are home and people are afraid. Like me, I have kids. They are doing their work at home. We not, what we're supposed to do. We're panicking. We're afraid.
Well, fear, panic, any form of anxiety is a natural response to uncertainty, especially as Cyrus had stated. These are things that can generate a lot of fears amongst people, and especially as he's even saying that it's in the air, you don't see it, so it's difficult to confront something that you do not see, that you do not hear. It doesn't affect any of your you don't it doesn't affect any of your real senses that you can touch, feel, smell, taste, and all of that. So has to give you some sort of courage to defend against it. So that becomes very stress and anxiety inducing. So fear, anxiety, panic, all of those things are natural responses for us, because whenever we as human beings, we are faced with some circumstances that are beyond our control, we panic, we get into the flight or fight mode or the freeze mode. And so those are natural. If those things happen, yes, recognize that you are panicking, that you are afraid, and try to regather yourself, because if you are in an extreme state of panic and fear, it becomes very difficult for you to think clearly. And if you cannot think clearly, it becomes difficult for you to figure out a solution. So yes, you may panic, but I want you to realize that is natural, it's a natural response, and therefore begin to think about at least plausible solutions, what you can do. And the first thing I will encourage people to do is relax. Okay, recognize it, acknowledge what you are feeling at that time. That is being mindful about your emotions, about your thoughts. Those are not your usual self, because something external has happened. So give yourself a break, relax. If it's possible that you can find a place to sit quietly, calm yourself, do a little bit of deep breathing so that you can relax, so that you can process the information clearly before you make a decision. Because as we can see today, people in reaction to this, people are over shopping, they are overspending, all the shelves, as we all know, they are all empty, because that is the result of people being in a panic mode and then just overreacting to the circumstances that are unfolding right now. So, but the first thing I would like for people to do, all of us to do, is to try as much as we can to calm down, try as much as we can to relax, because it is also going to impact those around us, especially those of us with kids. If they notice that their parents are panicking, they're out of control, because the more you panic about that, your sense of control, you eventually lose control. You may get angry, upset, and begin to maybe act inappropriately in some form. So again, I'll encourage people. That's the first step I would like them to do, is to take a little bit of step back, take some deep breath, and before you figure out what to do next. Okay.
Thank you, Dave. Let me bring in Levy Thompson, a travel nurse who has joined us, who's going to, Levy, welcome to Focus on Liberia. Let's say a little bit about yourself, and then we go into the discussion on the coronavirus.
Okay. I am. How you doing? Okay.
Levy is at work.
Yeah.
She's at the front line.
Yeah. I'm at work, so I can't say much, but I'm coming in one of the patients' rooms so I can talk. Okay. Oh, God. Yeah, we have to understand with this coronavirus that we have, it's something that is part of the SARS. Now they're calling it the SARS-2. So it comes from, they said this strain was from a bat. So it's something that we have to just be cautious about. It's something that we all have to take the time. We should have been doing it in the first place. My thing is that with Liberia, we don't have the public health to really educate the people in Liberia that we have. I'm sorry, Dennis, I did not really introduce myself. I'm Levy Thompson. I've been a nurse for over 20 years, and I've worked in various areas. I've also been in management. I'm currently doing my doctorate in public health, and I'm doing a study on the Lassa fever that we have now that is becoming a problem in Liberia. When I was in Liberia in 2018, the Lassa fever was something that started to raise its head. And I was like, so I was so interested in this, so I decided I wanted to study on it and do my dissertation on the Lassa fever. But anyway, that was just a sideline to that. I want to also thank everybody that's on here. I see my good friend Cyrus, who is also on here. He's such a he got so much knowledge in his field.
Thank you.
And the other panelists, I don't know them well, but I know you all are well knowledgeable too. But I wanted to say with the SARS, we have to just, not everybody, there's 4 categories that we have. We have the coronavirus 19 and the COVID-19. We have
You on mute. Oh, hold on. I think something happened. Hold on, Levin.
Can hear you, but I can't see anybody.
Yeah, Levy, hold on. We can't hear you, Levy.
She's not hearing you.
Maybe she's not hearing you too.
Yeah.
Just signal to her. Maybe she can see you.
Probably.
Okay. Let me go to Tervina, and then I can call her. Tervina, how do we cope? We are locked up at home.
Well, there are several ways that we can cope with this. I wanted to piggyback on what I think was Mr. Jazz said about doing some meditation. But the first thing I will suggest is take a break from online. Disconnect from periodically disconnect from the internet. What I mean is disconnect from the news, disconnect from Facebook, just everything a little bit, just or everything you're getting about coronavirus. Throughout the day, take some breaks and do something fun, something you enjoy, versus just constantly, be on there and just scrolling throughout. But take some break and do something else. And if it's difficult for you, some people set up some, apps that will keep them offline for a little bit. disconnect yourself from the internet a little bit, or from the, social media a little bit. It'll help, to reduce the stress and all, all this news and anxiety and everything that's out there. So there's one thing we can do, and I like meditation as well. Do some yoga and some meditation. You don't have to do much, even though there are a lot of things on the internet, on YouTube and other places. There are a lot of apps out there like Headspace and other apps, but just a simple deep breathing exercises. Exercise just for 3 to 5 minutes. Breathe in, breathe out, throughout your day when you're working. I do that periodically. Even when I'm working consciously, I will do some breathing exercises, but I help, help my mind, your body, and your soul. So things like that. Eat healthy, stay hydrated, exercise at home. That's very important. Little exercises you can do at home, 3 to 5 minutes to help your whole body, mind, and soul. Of course, get some sleep. This thing is very troubling. It's frightening, and so disconnect yourself and be able to sleep. But I'll stop there for now, and then we can. Or if you want to continue, I can go on. But there are a lot more that we can do. Also, go for a walk. We're stuck in our house. Pretty much, we're on national timeout. So you can go for a walk. The same way you take lunches at work or take breaks at work. Just step out of your house, walk around the compound, walk around your neighborhood. Bike if you can bike, but remember the social distance. But take your bike and go out there. So there's something you can do. Also, this is a good time to connect with people that you haven't connected with. And when I say connect, not to go visit, but to call them. FaceTime your loved ones, your friends. Check on your neighbors. There are a lot of apps out there that people, neighborhood apps that people are on. Check on your neighbors and see if somebody needs some help. I was looking at something online today, and somebody needed help for some grocery or something, and another neighbor was willing to go and get the grocery, but they just wanted a person to pay them because that elderly neighbor could not, get the grocery. So things like that, and you can also, take some warm baths. And daily shower, that helps a whole lot. As simple as it may sound, but it helps a whole lot. And if you like me, I would suggest add some Epsom salts, add some candles, essential oils. All of that will help to reduce the stress on the body and help you to stay centered and focused. So I'll stop there for now, and then we can revisit that because I don't want to keep talking. Or if you want me, I can keep talking about coping tips.
We'll come back to you. Levy, we couldn't hear you in the middle of it. So if you can just start where you stop.
Oh, I don't know where I stop.
All right. Okay. So talk to us about how people contact the virus, and you as
Okay.
what are some things you were seeing, and what are you telling your patient and people around?
Okay. Now the thing is, contacting this COVID-19 people contact is droplets, it's touching. You can touch surfaces that somebody who has the virus has touched if they did not wash their hands when they cough. So it could be touching. So you never know. That's why they tell you to limit your groupings, that they don't want people in large groups, or they don't want people, you have to monitor where you are, who you around, wash your surfaces. Say if you in areas like people, mostly like New York, you may be in public transportations and stuff like that, and you're touching, and you never know who got what. So they're just telling you, and that's why the hand sanitizer is so important, because you do not have soap and water with you when you're on public transportation or you're on the train. You don't have hand sanitizer with you when you walking to work or coming to work or going to your cafeteria. You don't have soap and water with you, but you have your hand sanitizer at all times. And they say be mindful when you're in public spaces. Do not touch your face, because your eye gauge, your nose, and your mouth are areas of transmission to enter. So they say be mindful of that, because you haven't washed your hands. And even the common thing that we use all the time, our cell phones, is something that they're saying that you should clean it all the time, because it's touching your face. And when it touches your face, you don't know if you may get a tear on it or something. and that tear can go back into your eye gate, or how you put it to your mouth. So these are the things that they say that you should be careful about. And also, the COVID-19, what we have to understand is we have to ask the patients about fever. They could have a low-grade fever. It don't have to be above 100. It could be low-grade fever, 99 plus fever that they can have. They can also be experiencing fatigue and muscle aches. Muscle aches is one of the most important parts of the COVID too that they're finding out. And of course, the tiredness that comes along with the flu. And then another doctor in Liberia, and I think I shared this on my page, that said if you take, and I heard it too from another doctor that I'm following, if you can hold your breath for 20 seconds and you can take a deep breath and hold it for 20 seconds and breathe back out without having any difficulty, then you may not have the COVID-19. Because, of course, by the time you start getting the respiratory problems, you already have that scarring on your lungs. And that's where the difficulty in breathing and breathing in and breathing out come from, because it scars the lung rapidly. And so you have with this COVID-19, you have like the 3 to 14 day window that you're in the, in the red with that. So if you've been exposed, you will start having the symptoms with the first 3 days or up to the 14 days. That's why they say quarantine yourself for the 14 days, because you don't know if you start feeling these symptoms. But most of the time, when patients start feeling these symptoms, they have already, the disease have already has scarred like 50% of their lungs already. And that is why we see the deaths in the older people and people with high comorbidities, which are like the diabetes, the impact on their immune system, which if somebody have AIDS, or somebody is have any kind of transplant or cancer or things like that, or diabetes, kidney failure, they say high blood pressure, things like that. These are things that people, those people may be the ones that are high risk. But we're looking now at patients that are at least 60 and above, and people with high comorbidities, like I have said. But how you can take care of yourself. And we're talking about how can we help the people in Liberia. Say, if I do not have vitamin C in Liberia, most of our people in the interior may not know what vitamin C is. You go to them and say you take vitamin C and you take zinc. They don't know what that is. What is vitamin C? But so then we have to start finding the foods or the fruits that are high in vitamin C. We can't go to them and say, take citrus fruits. They don't know what citrus fruits is. So we can ask them, do you have grapefruit? Do you have tomatoes? Do you have orange? These fruits are high in vitamin C. We tell them, take it. So they don't know what hand sanitizer is. If you go in the interior, they don't know what hand sanitizer is. Some of them may have alcohol, some of them may not have alcohol, right? So we say you can use, but in the interior, everybody got a root bottle. That's what we have to understand. Everybody got a root bottle, or cane juice, not palm wine, cane juice, because cane juice is very high in alcohol. So what we tell them, we say, okay, what you do is you take a little bit of the cane juice and put it with water, mix it with water. That will be your hand sanitizer. You wash your hands with it, because they may not have the soap. So you wash your hands with it and let it dry. And so these are things that we have to educate our people on in Liberia. But in here, if you're in America and in the diaspora, and you're so, it's like most of the time I look at it, I say, God, we're in a movie. This is what the movie will look like. So how do you keep yourself safe? You keep yourself safe from staying away from.
I will come back to
Excuse me?
you. I will come back to you, Levy. Let me bring in that the shoe to talk about the virus itself. From that what do I say? From the chemistry standpoint, how does the viral look like?
So, I mean, it's essentially the virus, as has been described. The genetic sequence is what's called a single-stranded RNA, right? So it's a single-stranded RNA virus. So basically, most people have heard about DNA. DNA is basically the genetic material, and it's double-stranded. So every living organism has a genetic sequence. So the genome, basically, which is the genetic sequence of this virus RNA, is a single-stranded RNA. So basically, the virus cannot necessarily replicate. It cannot replicate its genome, right? So when it gets into a person, it's basically going to hijack your machinery. It's going to use your enzymes and what have you to essentially replicate its genetic sequence. So it's going to take over that process, make more copies of itself. And so they actually use, as far as the testing goes, the main testing that's done is something called PCR. In this case, it's called reverse RT-PCR, because what you're going to do is you're going to basically isolate the RNA and then essentially copy it and amplify it to detect it. You're trying to detect the viral particles. So that test can take no more than a day. It's essentially you have this machine that is able to make huge amounts of if a person is infected, the genetics, the viral load will be in the swabs. So they're gonna take a swab of their nose or throat, and then they're going to, take that to the lab. They keep it at above room temperature, about 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and then it gets processed and basically to amplify, the concentration of that of the virus that's in the sample, and then that's basically how they, can detect whether or not someone has that is infected. That test can take hours, but it doesn't take more than a day to do that. They are trying to develop some blood tests. The problem with the blood just takes, you have to wait at least between 2 week intervals. So it just takes much longer. With the blood test, what they're going to be doing there is looking for antibodies that your body makes in response to being infected with a virus. So once you get infected with a virus, you have your immune system, you have B cells. The B cells get activated. You start to make antibodies in response to the antigen. The antigen is a foreign substance, in this case, the virus. So your body is going to elicit an immune response, and that immune response is in the form of antibodies that somebody can then develop a diagnostic kit to try to quantify how much of that antibodies that you're making. You only make that antibody in response to the particular sequence of the virus that you're infected with. So it's very specific. So they're going to be looking for activated levels of the antibody that you're making in response to the virus. But right now, the primary way that they're doing it is by using the PCR, which is basically copying the genetic material to huge amounts. You copy that a lot from the swabs that you get, and then if you don't have it, then then when they copy it and do the testing, they're not going to detect it. But if you are infected, once it gets processed in that lab, they will be able to detect the genetics. The presence of the virus genetic sequence will be detected by the PCR. So it's just basically you have a machine that they put the samples in, and they'll be able to. So basically, those are the two types of tests that's going on.
What's about this thing that this virus was produced in a lab? You've been in lab before.
Yeah. So I think there's always conspiracy theories. Having a legal background also, so I've been involved in litigation and things like that. And if you're involved in that you through the discovery process and what have you, it's very difficult for for people to pull these kind of conspiracies off. The degree of complicity, collusion, the silence that you would have to buy. A lot of scientists are not. Typically they don't really play they don't play well in the sandbox, right, with everybody. So most of them go into that field not necessarily to make a lot of money. Sometimes a lot of them, like especially you're talking about a lot of the experts typically would be at academic, universities and researchers. If they wanted to make a whole lot of money, they would be working for the Pfizers and the Gilead and what have you. So those people, the degree of complicity and collusion that it would take to pull these things off. It's not, and then you're talking about different countries that have different, financial interests, political interests. You would have to get them all to be on the same page, So it's very difficult, at least from what I've read and from what I've seen. I haven't seen anything to substantiate, the idea of, that this was manufactured in a lab for purposes of population control. I'm sure you've seen that. I haven't seen anything to substantiate those kind of assertions, actually. So.
Okay. Mr. Doe, someone, I don't know, you work in the ER. I don't know if you have seen any case of coronavirus where you are. If someone works in that emergency room, how do you determine this person has coronavirus and what will be the next step?
No, there is no way to just physically determine that the person has coronavirus. We don't. Oh, well, first, to answer your question, no, I've not had any case. Personally, as a provider in the emergency room, I've not had any case of that yet since I've been working, or since this started. But if a person comes in, we do a simple or a complete assessment of the person, ask them for all those symptoms, subjectively, if they can pronounce them or endorse that they're having them. Symptoms of lower respiratory problem. Of course, there has to be a presence of fever. There has to be a presence of dry cough, of course, and any contact. Have they traveled to areas, where there are areas of higher, where there's higher prevalence? If they've traveled to that area, then that alert us that we should be so much more concerned of this. Now, in my area, none of the emergency departments here have the testing kit. And as a lot of us do know, like down here in the US, the testing kits have some faults with them. So whether there is a false positive or a false negative test to that result, but what we have been taught to do, one of the emergency departments that I work in, we can order a respiratory panel and that lab results within a couple of hours. But once we ask questions that would include or exclude the symptoms that are severe enough or the risk factors that are present to be included for a diagnosis, then we alert the local state health department to take control of the case, and they will call us back with instructions on, what to do. Either come in and take over the case and transfer the patient somewhere else. But that's by far that. But so far, no, nothing personally. We've had people that have been traveling intercontinentally to that point, but that's by far it. Are you there? Hello?
So the coronavirus is
Feedback.
Just give me a minute. The coronavirus is not new, right?
No, it is not. This particular strain is, but the
Right.
coronavirus is not new.
Right. So it's a family of viruses, right? So MERS, SARS, all of those are the family of corona. They're part of the same family of viruses. You can think about it that way. So they're similar. But this one, the CV-19, is different than MERS and SARS and what have you. But they are from the same family.
So Dave, we are home now. How do we communicate this to our little ones? I know there are a lot of things going around. There are videos being shared about, the pastor predicted it, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And then there are other remedies that have been provided. Some do this or drink Julubo. How do we communicate to our children what they need to do without, putting fear in them or making everybody to panic at home?
Yeah. No, thank you. Good question. Yes, first, even on the issue of the information overloading that is taking place right now, in these circumstances, more or less everybody is an expert. I I just encourage folks not to pay attention to most of those information that are coming out there. Like what my sister Levy was also saying, that turn off the television a little bit, and the Facebook and all of those quack doctors that are out there providing all sort of information, because we need to take these things very seriously, because as we all know, Liberia, when the Ebola started, people were just making fun, doing all sort of things, and then when it got serious, before they started getting serious, and it was more or less late. So again, the information that we gather, let's try to get it from the expert, from the people who know about those things. The CDC is constantly providing some information for all of us. Your primary doctor can also provide you with some information, and some of the experts that are in the field that can provide information for us. And then when we bring it home to our little ones, in the first place, is that the children now begin to realize, though they think it might be fun that they are staying home, they don't have to go to school, wake up in the morning, but so perhaps they don't really understand the magnitude of that. But having said that, we should still communicate with them in a very understandable, simple language, why they are home, what is happening to them. Also, do not overload them with too much of information, with very much difficult information that they may not be able to understand, comprehend, but be very simple to them, related to their own life experiences. If you can use even their video games and whatever to communicate that with them, why they are not going to school, why they are not meeting with their friends, in these days and in these circumstances. You can break that down without you even inciting fear into them, but just being very honest with them, that there will be a lot of changes in places that we used to go. We will not go there right now. They will be asking you as to why they can go to the store, to maybe visit their friends. You just honestly communicate with them, let them know why that is not happening. Um, Simple hygienes also, you have to teach them in a very simplistic way. What is the importance of washing their hands? Why is it that you may come from outside and you may not immediately hug them or give them a kiss on their cheeks or whatever, because of the changing circumstances that we find ourselves in. So again, let's be simple. Let us be calming to the children. Let us relax as much as we can, because if we begin to panic, they as well will panic. Also, uh, when kids stay home a lot, they remain indoor. There is a tendency for them to begin to get agitated. They argue a lot. They scream at each other. Then, so those things, you should expect them to happen, but try to find time, communicate with them honestly. Um, they can go outside at some point and walk around the building, play some games at home, and continue to provide them with guidance as to what they need to do, and also let them know that they should economize on the food, not to eat it in one moment.
That's a good
Because they
one.
think that it is party time, they are staying home so they can eat everything. No, tell them that if they overuse it, within 2-3 weeks, you might run out. We don't know what is going to happen eventually,
That's a good point.
so they can be very much careful with the food as well. And
Yeah.
this can be a time too for family to even reflect. Get closer, cool it down, get some things done. If you were working on a novel that you could not have time to work on, great. I mean, for me, I'm still going to work. It's just that today um, I'm I'm off from my internship, um, so that's why I'm home right now. But uh, next tomorrow or the day after, I'll be going out there in the community. So at home, relax. In fact, I got some dumbbells that I'm going to be doing some weightlifting while I'm home. So
Yeah.
these are things that you can, and you know, share some fun at home. Make some jokes, let people laugh. And life has to still go on, and just inspire hope into people that, hey, there is hope. We have gone through similar circumstances. Things of this nature have happened, and we will survive eventually.
Thank you.
We should just keep our hope alive and then remain firm and don't get easily rattled.
Davina?
Yeah, I mean, you stressed some good points that I had on my notes here. But I wanted to talk about the issue, the question you asked about what can we do, some things we can do with the children.
Right.
And they're home, they're surfing the web a lot more, they're using the phone a lot more, they're going places that they should not be going because they're curious and they have all this free time. I have mine not they're not going there, but I have two kids in college, but just to have those conversations about them, about staying safe online. The predators are taking advantage of this situation as well. They're sending our children pornography. Our children are being exposed to all kinds of sites. So just talk to them about safe sites. If they get anything that is, inappropriate, they should let you know. And also putting all those parental controls on the phone. The fact that they're home all day. So putting all those blocks to make sure they're not going on sites or they're not getting those things that they shouldn't be looking at. They're not exposed to that because, like I said, the bad guys are at work. Um, and then talking about the book, there's one thing, I am glad he mentioned that too. But if you have some project at home that you've been wanting to do because of your busy schedule, now is the time to do it. Work on that project. You know, clean up your office, declutter. That's the time to declutter. If you have your office that need to be rearranged or your closet, or do something fun with the family, watch a movie, nothing dramatic, something fun, some documentary, something that you guys can enjoy, do some woodwork or some painting around the house, read a book, nothing fancy, but just some book or some short story, something totally different from what just surfing the web or the news and having this constant not Ebola, coronavirus discussions in your head and it's seeing that, but or read a magazine, separate yourself a little bit from that and take some naps throughout the day. I like to take naps. So my lunchtime is my nap time. Take some nap. It helps the brain. I mean, all the doctors are here. They know the effect of that. But spend some quality time with yourself. And if you have pets, spend time with your pet too. That's the time, to spend some time with your pet as well. Take a hobby. I mean, if you pick up a hobby. I like journaling. I like coloring. I got two coloring books here that I already have. I like coloring, and I got them from CNC online. But pick a coloring book, and it's for I use it for anti-stress, and you just color. Do some coloring, do some cooking, some baking, just something you love doing that you don't have the time to do. So that's some of the things I would suggest.
Ladies and
And
gentlemen,
go
if you
ahead.
just
Sorry.
joining us, this is Focus on Liberia. We are discussing the coronavirus with people from various professional backgrounds. Our phone lines are open 646. Uh, the phone lines 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403. So you can call Levy. I know you are at work and you have to go, but let
Yeah.
me ask you about yourself, the nurses are in the front line. So how are, nurses protecting themselves too from contacting the disease? What are you being told, and what can you tell others who are also our nurses, our CNAs, our doctors? What can they do?
Well, there's always slip throughs, but like I said, we are in a controlled environment. You can always control the environment you're in. So of course, with us, we have increased in our surroundings with our patients, cleaning more. We have now a policy where we could bring in visitors. We don't do that anymore. We have to, if the patient is discharged, then the visitor can go with them, but we don't have the visitors come and be with patients as we clean more. We wipe down the handles. We have the EVS, environmental people. They're wiping down more than usual. If the patients are coming in and they have like allergies and stuff, we have the mask that we give them to wear. We have hand sanitizers on all of our computers. We call them WOW, that we use for the patients, for the EMRs and stuff. We're washing our hands more frequently. So because we're in a controlled environment, so we are more protected in that controlled environment. And if it happened that anything sneaks out, of course, the companies do give us time off. The government, for the government, that they are doing now 128 hours for healthcare workers that may be or are afraid that their family may be at risk to be off 128 hours. So there's ways that everybody is putting into play that we will not, to protect the frontliners like us. And another thing that I can say as a woman of faith, a woman of strong faith, cover yourself with the blood of Jesus. Pray Psalm 91 over your life. Anoint you and your family before they go out, and just believe in God that you are protected, because what we see now is an invisible enemy. And that's what we have to understand. It's an invisible enemy. We don't know where it is. We don't know who have it. There may be people that have it. Like I said, you may have it and you may not have any symptoms for 2 weeks until it's too late. But then you also have gone around people, and those people may get sick, maybe earlier than you are. But we just have to protect ourselves. We don't know who is. The best thing we do to ourselves, for ourselves, is we pre-screen the patients before they come in. We ask, have you had any fevers? Have you had any pains, any muscle aches and stuff like that? If they say, oh yeah, I had a 99.9 fever, we say, okay, reschedule your surgery. And so these are ways that we are putting ourselves, to keep ourselves free from what it is.
Sure.
But I know I have promised Dennis yesterday that I will come on for a short while, and I just thank everybody. And Dennis, on Sunday, I'm gonna have time to sit and be on to really discuss this. But I just thank the people that we have on. But I wanted to say with the doctor, one thing he said 40 degrees. In all my research that I've been researching so far, except it has been changed in the last 48 hours, that this virus do not live in more than 28 degrees centigrade. And I don't know the conversion, but 28 degrees centigrade. So, and the test is very sensitive. So when you do the testing, and I was listening to one of the scientists when she came on with the WHO, World Health Organization, and she did say that they've been getting false negatives because they've been going through the nasal passages, the nostrils, but you have to have the throat because that's where the virus lives. So we have to be able to know. You have different virus strands or bacteria strands in the nasal passages. So MRSA lives in the nasal passage. So you don't want to go and do a nasal swab and think that is the COVID-19 when you have other things living in your nasal passages. So they said, be careful and do the throat swab. It's more accurate than when you do the nasal. I just wanted to say that because sometimes when we're saying these things, we just have to be accurate, but not to say that the doctor is not right, but I'm just saying that maybe the latest research that they came up with, but in mind within the last 48 hours.
Right, so the 35 to 40 degrees is a reference to the temperature that you have. Once you collect the samples, that's the temperature that they require to keep those cans. So the cans are kept cooled at, that's the temperature, that's the protocol. That's straight from the protocol from the WHO. That's what they recommend.
From the 45 degrees.
35 to 40 degrees, the samples must be. So you do the swab, you put it in a chilled container, right? And that container must be kept in that range, 35 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what the WHO recommends.
Oh, okay. Because
that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, because
thank you.
Okay, because I was reading that it was 28. Okay.
Well, it could be that. So I'm talking Fahrenheit. So yeah, so it's 35 to 40, and then it would be different number.
Okay, Fahrenheit. Okay, that's different. Fahrenheit and centigrade.
Right.
Yeah, I'm talking centigrade.
Right, you're talking
centigrade, which is yeah. Okay.
Celsius.
Okay.
Right. We have a caller on the line, Christopher Tobasi.
Okay.
You are live.
Yeah, brother Ja, I want to say thank you. And first of all, I want to say thank you to our professionals in studio tonight. After that being said, my message tonight is to our Honorable President George M. Weah. I want the president. I want to say thank you to the president for the measures or for the steps that he has already taken. But also, I want to urge him to please put additional measures in place. You know, I'm calling on the president to please, if possible, ask Liberians stay home for at least 2 weeks, either 2 weeks to probably a month. You know, so that we can be able to fight this dirty disease, so that we can probably try to cover it or maybe try to find solutions to our problems. But Mr. Ja, you know, the situation in Liberia is people are not, some people are not fully aware of what we are talking about. And it's sad. You know, it's sad. I'm just talking to a couple of people right now. They are telling me that if the president asks them to stay home, then the president should give them checks. For a country like Liberia, I don't think we'll be able to give out checks. You know, but if you know the government or the president can say we will be able to feed our people, you know, while they are home. You know, for the time being, maybe we can do that. We can help feed our people. But to give out checks, I don't think Liberia is in a position to do that.
Okay.
I want to say thank you to you and thank you to our professionals in the studio for the information, for the awareness. You know, I hope many of our people in the diaspora and back home are listening. I've been sharing the video, you know, like I usually will come on this show and I mean help to share the video so that the message can get out to our people so that people can know what to do. You know, again, I want to say thank you to the president for the measures already put in place, but I'm calling on him And I'm asking him, I'm pleading with him to please put additional measures in place. You know, the 1 week, I really don't think it's enough. I think you should increase it to at least 2 to 3 weeks or a month so that we can be able to fight this disease. Thank you very much, Honorable Job.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Let me bring in my second caller before my panelists respond. That's Kesali Double. Kesali, you are live. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Texas, Houston.
Houston in the house.
Thanks, I do join Mr. Jar for permitting me to be on the show. And thanks to our panelists, the medical practitioners in the studio. I would want them to please do us a favor. Why it's true that this virus is known to all everyone all the world over. Can you please give some advice specifically to our vulnerable people back home? And especially when it comes to, you know, after maybe let's say people have been killed from the virus, like it was done with the Ebola issue, where when you were killed from the virus, people started being afraid of you, people started, you know, treating you as if to say the war was coming down on you. So can they please give us some advice, especially for our blue person, so that you know people don't be treated in that form and manner.
Thank you.
And what are some of the ways we can treat people who recover from the virus? You know?
Thank you. Let me go to Sarah. Sarah's.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You heard the question when it comes to first of all, can this be treated? Or can it be treated? And after people are aware, what advice will you give to people in Liberia concerning preventing themselves from catching the virus? And if people are cured from it, or if people get better, you know, what do we do? What's the advice so that they don't get stigmatized? I think we all saw in the news that someone, a government official came from abroad and was reported to have the virus. According to the news, he refused to be quarantined, and there was all kind of noise surrounding that. So what do we advise for people in Liberia?
Well, thank you for the question. If I may say, I have to start getting ready for work in a few minutes. I have to be at work in 45 minutes. So yeah, I will respond to this question, and if you don't mind, I will have to take my exit, please. Sure. So there is no cure for this particular virus. There is absolutely no cure. So whatever you do has to be symptomatic, you know, with hydration, cough suppressants, some antipyretics, you know, to take, and at the same time isolate yourself as well. That's ultimately what you will need to do. Now, for statistics, most of the people that, you know, have been on the fatal end of this particular virus, you know, are people older than 70 years old. The incidence of fatality in that age group is more than 14%. People younger than 30 years old, very, very rarely have they been, you know, have they really experienced, you know, acquiring this particular problem. There is no fatality when it comes to younger children. There is none like that. So strict isolation is very important. Having enough vitamin C in your body, you know, through fruits and vitamin C tablets. You know, if you can say that, or if you add to that, there's always the case of stigmatization. There's absolutely always the case of it. So that happens. You know, it would take you the world to tell people that it really isn't, you know, pleasant to stigmatize people. But I will leave that with the honorable psychotherapist to hopefully address that, since that is the psychological aspect of things. As far as it relates to the government of Liberia and the presence of COVID-19, you know, there are so many questions to ask about that. And the questions could be legitimate. You know, did this guy really test positive for it? Did he not? Was he supposed to refuse, or was he not supposed to refuse? You test a guy, and the turnaround time, if they did have this test, the turnaround time for it is 24 hours. So within 24 hours, if they had the result, then mandatory isolation. Not after 2 days. You have when you do test again, you have to wait a couple of days, at least 3 to 5, then you retest, and then you get another confirmatory test before allowing this guy into the public. This virus can live in your body for 4 to 5 weeks, on average 37 days. So that's more than a week already, more than 4 weeks or more than a month already. So 4 to 5 weeks, it survives in your body and it can stay dormant. You cannot have direct immunity to it afterwards. You still have a greater chance of being reinfected with the virus. After you test negative for it, it still lives in your body. In very, very rare instances, a person can have immunity, but for a very short period, sometimes 1 to 2 years. So if COVID should come back, God forbid, if we get rid of this and it comes back again, people who've been infected can still get infected again. So strict measures should be in place. No one is immune to this. Just because you're young and you haven't gotten it, or just because you're very healthy and you haven't gotten it, doesn't mean you can't. As a provider in the emergency room, I'm at the front line of this. I mean, I'm not immune to this. I'm exposed to it. I'm vulnerable to this. But like Ledby said, as a person with a Christian faith, I put on the full body and armor of God and I get in. But still, with that Christian mindset, I still take all the precautions that I need to take. Liberia, let's put Liberia aside. Let's look at all the other countries that are being affected with this. The country called Italy even had 245 fatality just today. But they're a country with superior, formidable, and functional healthcare system, but they're still battling with this. Look at Liberia, that, if I may say, does not have a formidable, existent, or functional healthcare system, should put in very, very strict measures. If there is one person that tested positive for it, everybody else that came into direct contact with that person should have been quarantined, mandatory. I will applaud the driver that turned himself in. Unfortunately, he was taken somewhere else, was not tested according to the reports that we read. But I will applaud him for being so open and coming back to say that, hey, yeah, I was in contact with this person. So whatever procedure that I need to go through, let me go through that. So that's thankful. But in short, I would say strict quarantine measures, supportive care with symptom-based treatment. So antipyretics or analgesics for the body aches and for the fever, fluids to stay hydrated, antitussives, if you're not allergic to it, then, you can take that to suppress the cough. Nebulizer treatments or oxygen, if your home is equipped with that, to have it in your home as well to facilitate supplemental breathing.
Okay. Your final words as you leave?
My final words is, I pray with everyone. I hope everyone take this serious. It's always good to have a sense of humor. I work in the emergency room. It's very stressful. And I do have a good sense of humor about this too, but yet still, take precautions. I feel for those of you who have family, I can imagine your kids eating all the food in a short time period. But I pray that you guys really survive it. I make fun of myself. It's going to be bad that if I have to be quarantined, I'm just going to be home by myself, no one to talk to. I guess I'll just watch TV. This is a moment sometimes I regret why I'm single, but it's still is, yeah,
it's never too late.
It still is okay, but let all of us be very, very cautious out there. Wash your hands as often as possible. Hand sanitizer that's alcohol based, at least greater than 60%. Stay clean. Yeah. Those will be my final words. We'll all be in constant prayer and constant touch with each of us. So thank you.
Thank you. And you're free to leave. And Talvina, if you can adjust your camera a little bit so that we see. All right.
Better?
Yeah,
Is it better?
That's better. So let's go around the room. Anything that we've not covered that you want to touch on as we leave, as we come to the end. Yeah.
I think there's one thing that we should address. So it's the idea of, because I get this question all the time: is this virus, can it be transmitted airborne? So the language of respiratory droplets confuses people, right? Because you have the word respiratory in there, so people automatically assume that means airborne transmission. The studies that Cyrus referred to, where they said, well, the virus they're talking about the respiratory particles, right? So, for example, spit, or if you breathe, that's what they're talking about in the air. Now, that's different from saying something is can be transmitted airborne. Airborne would be if it didn't have to land on something. Okay, it's just in the air and you can just inhale it directly, right? It would not require landing on surfaces. So none of they've done some studies recently but the studies haven't been peer reviewed, right? So it's not definitive. So they took the virus and they, mix it up with some chemicals to make it aerosolized, right? And then they're trying to see if it can be airborne transmission. That's what they're trying to investigate. Those studies are not definitive yet. So I would say there's no definitive evidence that the virus can be airborne transmitted. You have respiratory droplets that either have to land on a surface, like he said. It can remain on those surfaces. Some of them, I think, up to 4 days or so. It depends what type of surface. If it's cardboard, I think it's 24 hours. So the droplets can remain on those surfaces, and then it will require you to put your hands on there and touch it. That's why they're telling you not to, to wash your hands. Because let's say, for example, you're walking down a pathway, right? A lot of people, if they have railings, including your children, they usually like to hang on those railings, right? If it has stairways, kids like to hang on there and rub their hand on it. So steel is one of the things that the virus can stay on for a long time. So if somebody was contaminated and they had respiratory droplets on their hand and they touched that steel and the virus is still there. But again, we're talking about the actual droplets being on a surface, not just in the air and then you inhaling them directly. They haven't really fully proven that yet. They're trying to see if that's the case, but that hasn't been definitively proven. So respiratory droplets is different from something being completed airborne. If it was completed airborne, it would not require to have to be on a surface. It would just be in the air. You would just be able to just breathe it in, which would be, the infection rate would skyrocket. So that's something, I know a lot of people are panicking, and, the articles get posted around and I see the words in there, airborne transmission. They've done some studies, but whenever you do those kind of studies, the studies haven't been peer reviewed properly yet. So they put it out there just, to kind of get discussions going, but it hasn't been peer reviewed by, I would say, the most reputable scientific and medical communities. So there's no consensus that this CV-19 can be transmitted airborne. There isn't, a definitive confirmation that you can say that this virus can be transmitted airborne. It's transmitted in droplets. You either touch a surface that has that droplet, right? And so that's one way you can get it. Or, if somebody is talking and they spit on you directly, and let's say close to your eye, and something like that. But out of those instances, whether you're touching something or the air droplets is landing, close to your eye or your skin, and then somehow it gets into your eye or your mouth or nose, still requires it to land and then be transmitted, right? So that's the distinction between respiratory droplets and airborne transmission. That's it, because I get that question from people all the time.
And you are right. And that's why I pull up the CDC website, how the COVID-19 spread, person to person spread. The virus is thought to spread mainly from person to person, between persons who are in close contact with one another within about 6 feet.
Correct.
Through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby or possibly inhaled into their lungs.
So that's why they're saying that 6 feet, because that social distancing. I'm sure you heard the word social distance, social distance. So they've shown that, 6 feet, when you sneeze, typically it doesn't travel more than 6 feet. So that's why they're giving you that 6 feet boundary, right? So if you can do that, if you're in the public, if you can try to do that as much as possible, especially when you see somebody sneezing or coughing, you want to at least make sure that you're 6 feet more. I'll say more than 6 feet from that person, right? You want
So
to
how
try.
does this mask help? I can cover my mouth, but it can
So
still get in my eye, right?
correct. So that's another sort of misconception. The mask, first of all, there's different types of masks. The best one that I've seen so far is the one they call the N95. Right? I'm sure you probably heard that. The N95, if you go to the CDC webpage, they will talk about the N95. So all masks are not created equal. That's the one thing. If you're going to buy it, you need to buy the right one, right? It's a little bit more expensive, but that's the one that works best. So, and there's also some danger associated with just the mask really should only be worn if you know that you're ill or you suspect that you're ill and you don't want to transmit it to other people. That's when you wear the mask. Other than people that work on the front lines, right? Like the nurses and what have you, because they're in close contact with ill people. So that's why they're telling people not to go out and buy those masks because there's a shortage right now. I know a physician, for example, that had to basically he had to they're going to change their whole practice to be 70% telemedicine, right? Instead of, because they've ran out of the PPE, personal protective equipment. So it's a danger for them to physically see patients. So you don't want everybody going out and buying those masks because, number one, they're not going to buy the right type. If you buy the wrong type, you can actually incubate the virus in there. So basically, if you don't have the right type of mask, and the N95 is supposedly the best one, you can basically almost help to grow the virus because some of the masks they accumulate moisture, right? And they don't get rid of the moisture. You have to have proper air exchange so that you don't create a moist environment. If it's too moist, some of the masks are too moist, then a virus could replicate, double. Basically you're creating an environment. So here you are wearing a mask, and you could end up spreading more.
Viruses.
Yeah, you only wear that mask if you know that you are sick and you're trying to protect other people from getting it from you. Then you wear the mask. If you work in the front lines, that's different because they have to assume that they're constantly in contact with sick people, and what have you. So they're trying to protect the people, and they're also trying to protect themselves, as well as they don't want to, because they're seeing so many sick patients, they kind of assume that they could be carrying it, right? So people on the front lines, nurses, doctors, they do wear those things, and they are wearing it now. But for regular people to just go out and start buying that, if everybody does that, the people on the front line are going to run out of that. And if they run out of it, that's really bad for the rest of us, so it should be avoided.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me go to Telvina. Anything that you want to cover before we?
Yeah, I think one of the callers talked about what we wanted to send, asking us to send a word to the president or to Liberia. Can you guys hear me? I sound kind of low.
Yeah.
Okay, so a couple of suggestions is just to continue the awareness. Our people need it, even the awareness on stigmatization. Definitely, it's here. There's no way we can avoid it here too, but we can minimize it. So just talking to our people, because if we don't do that, even the people who feel otherwise, they won't come forward. They'll be hiding their homes and they'll be spreading the virus because, how people feel and things. So we need to talk about that more. And I will say, hold off on the road project. I know there are a lot of roads going on now. Hold off on that. There's something called, prioritization. And so now this is a high priority. Hold off on the road project, redirect those fundings into this. This is a global cost. This is serious. Forget about that and pump all the resources, put all the money into this. Open more clinics, standby clinics, fund the existing clinics, take care of all of that. And take care of people, even the ones that are going to be in quarantine or self-isolation or whatever it is, follow up on them, take care of them. You're taking them from a place of their comfort. You take me from my house and you're probably in a hospital. You have to keep me hydrated. Let me eat. Let me feel like I'm still at home. I know home wouldn't be the same, but at least let me feel somehow that I'm still at home. So that's very important. So if there's anything I could send out there, that would be my message to them. I'm not sure they have any budget allocation for that, but if anything, use the road project money to do this.
Dave?
Yeah, it's in the same direction. I also want to urge people that nobody goes around asking for a sickness, asking to be infested with a disease. It's just an unfortunate circumstance that we find ourselves in. So people should be understanding of one another, especially where we say, okay, this is transmitted from person to person. That itself brings about real isolation. It brings about suspicion of one another, a lot of distrust. I've seen myself even go to a store and someone just, everybody is like on the lookout, looking over their shoulders. It's like a sense of suspicion of one another. That is not auguring well for most of us. And we know in our society, Liberia, we've been a very social kind of society. We look at even the area of Maserati County or Monrovia is so much overcrowded at this point in time. So these are really difficult times for our people. And also, especially our folks who live on day-to-day livelihood. You have to go in the street. Also, for that day, you get food, you eat that, and then the next day you have to go again. So it's going to be really tough and challenging for them. And I really empathize with them for such. But such is the circumstance in which they find themselves. Make the best out of it. Do the very best. All those who have some hands, who have some advantages in life, you'll also think about the folks in Liberia who are going to be isolating for weeks, for maybe months, and they will not be able to go out there and hustle and find something for their families to eat. So let's think about them. And as our sister said, government should begin to prioritize those things. I was hearing some folks even calling for immediate shutdown of all the borders. And, that's again something that people have to think through as well. As our people travel from across border just to make a living, they'll have to go to Guinea to get pepper, to get things, for their livelihood. So these are difficult circumstances, and we have always held together, in the point of crisis. This is what also makes the African person very, very strong. The least we have, the more cohesive we become. We share with others. We share ideas. We share thoughts. We share our food. So we've gone through it. The wall, we saw it. We went through it, where you have your little rice mixed with cassava leaves and palm butter. You make it so plenty, and all the neighbors, we all come around. So in the midst of this, let's try to be our brothers and sisters. Keeper, this will eventually pass, and we will again celebrate together. So thank you all and especially the focus on Liberia family for the opportunity provided. And something I wanted to hear from the medical practitioner, how did the salt go away? Since both of them are in the same family, what happened? Was there any kind of a treatment for the SARS, or something that they have learned from that SARS experience that they can also use for this?
So she's not here, but I mean, so they're similar enough. The viruses of SARS is similar enough, but it's different, it's slightly different. So the sequence, so there's a distinction there. So what they try to do, they do try to use, there's two ways you can try to treat a virus like this, right? You can use drugs that have been used before and just try it and see if they work, or you can do vaccines. So vaccines take longer to develop.
No.
They take like about at least a year. No matter what they're saying, it's going to take about a year. Call it maybe 9 months. That would be the best case scenario. So we don't have a vaccine that's ready to go. There are some drugs that they are trying. For example, believe it or not, chloroquine. I'm sure all of us here know chloroquine.
Yeah, I heard about malaria treatment.
Right. So they tried it in Oklahoma. They're trying it in a patient. So there are some hope. So there's chloroquine. There's another one called remdesivir. So remdesivir is being developed by Gilead. That's in a phase 3. So that's when you have different clinical trials. That's the last clinical trial. So that's very, very hopeful. That's probably the most hopeful one. Chloroquine has already been approved. So in medicine, you can take, it doesn't have to go through another drug approval because it has already been approved for something else. So you can take an old drug that was approved for malaria and try it and see if it worked. They actually did that in Liberia during the Ebola. There's a doctor there, I forget his name. He did some stuff like that. He used HIV drugs to treat some Ebola patients pretty successfully. So they can do exactly what you're suggesting. They could take some of the drugs that were used for SARS and then you try it out and see if it works. So that's an option, and they are exploring a lot of those things. There's another drug out of Cuba called interferon alpha B. So that's very hopeful. That's actually worked in real patients too. So chloroquine, the drug out of Cuba called interferon alpha B, and then this one being developed by Gilead called remdesivir, and then there's one out of Japan. So there is hope, right? There are some drugs that are at the last phase of testing. They're doing the clinical trial, and then you also have older drugs that they're actually using in people that seem to work in some people. So it's not as if it's not as if there's no hope. There's some hope there. And then meanwhile, you're developing the vaccines as quickly as possible. The goal being that hopefully 9 months, you could have one, definitely about a year. And then meanwhile, these other drugs, existing drugs and drugs that are at the last phase of testing, some of the ones that I mentioned, the one out of Japan and the one being developed by the company called Gilead. So there's some hope. As far as the Liberian situation, I would like to say this. So one thing I think we really need to consider here, unlike Ebola, this disease, you have to also, the isolation is the cheapest way that what we can do, right? In terms of resources, we can do that. We should be able to do that. And we have experience doing that because of Ebola. That, like Sarah said, if you even suspect that somebody has that, you have to test. So if you don't test, you don't know. So you must test, confirm that person has it, and then you have to isolate them and everybody else that came in contact with them. That's what they call the contact tracing. So testing, isolation, contact tracing to find other people that came in touch with that gentleman, the driver. I think he went to church. You got to isolate all of those people. So because that's the cheapest. We don't have the other part of this disease that's really going to be the biggest challenge is the ICU beds and the ventilators. Because unlike Ebola, this is what's really going to wreak the havoc. People get pneumonia. You have to put them on the ventilators. If you don't have enough ventilators, that's going to be an issue. The great US of A, they don't even have enough ventilators. I'm sure you've been reading. So just imagine us. So for me, I think it would be kind of potentially hazardous if we only focus on the isolation, the isolation, testing, isolation, and contact tracing. We also have to try to, I know there's not enough money and what have you, but there will be people, that will get the pneumonia, that will get the septic shock. People going into septic shock. Yes, you can get that even from a virus. A lot of people think you can only go into septic shock from bacteria. You can actually get that from this virus. So there's pneumonia, septic shock, and then there's something else called acute respiratory distress syndrome. So all three of those things will require, ICU beds and possibly being put on a ventilator. So we need to also find the money to have, purchase some ventilators and also have enough ICU beds. You can't approach it like Ebola, where you give whatever treatment, and even if you didn't have ventilators, because maybe that wasn't such a critical issue for that. But for this, it's all about, because it's an upper respiratory infection, right? So it's affecting your lungs. So to address that, you must address the ventilator issue. So for me, that's the only thing I would say, that we have to find the capacity to have some ventilators and ICU beds, along with the testing and the isolation and the contact tracing.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of you for your time tonight. We will do this again. We've contacted some doctors that are in infectious disease.
Yep.
So we're working on that, and as soon as we got the availability, we're going to come back, because the story is always changing, right? And
Yeah.
things maybe getting worse or improving. So we're going to do this again and get our people informed. We want to thank all of you for your time tonight. We want to thank our viewers for hanging in there with us. Let me see. We don't have any more questions. Let me take just one last caller, and then we can close the broadcast. The caller is Murphy. Murphy, you're live. Where are you calling from?
Thank you very much. My name is Murphy Sokri, and I'm calling from the Twin City, Minnesota.
Murphy, you are live. Your question or comment before we close?
Okay, so quickly, let me just say thanks to all your panelists. I just want to, and I'm passionate about what's going on in Liberia, like the doctor said. Tell you the truth, this coronavirus comes with price. You cannot do anything if you don't have money. And what's going on in our country, and I hope everybody is aware, we had just one positive case. The doctor from EPA, he called and said, they took me to Redemption Hospital, left me there for 5 hours. They didn't bring food, they didn't bring water, there was no current. So the way we approach this also is very important, very, very important. And if you do the first person like this, then his driver went and sat down for 6 hours just to come and be tested to be negative. But you get the man in the ambulance for that long. So it will make other people afraid to even come up. Yeah. Because it's not only to be the vaccine that will heal you, sometimes the way you'll be taken care of. They even help to ease the tension. So part of my recommendation to the government is we got to be serious. And we've been saying this before the country was in the. If we don't plan, then we're planning to fail. Mm-hmm. And I'm just giving most of the countries a hard time. And right now, you can't beg anybody outside of Liberia because they themselves having their own crisis. So we got to have work our own and make it work. Look, let the president close his eyes. Like I said, they got importers in the country. They got people who bring gasoline, bringing food, bringing rice. Let those people visit them. Because, and all of you who are on the farm, you can't keep somebody and you don't feed them. Even people complaining to the federal hotel that they're keeping them for 14 days. They're not even giving them correct water and food. How do you do that? And then the people families are not allowed to go near them because they're even afraid they don't know whether they have the virus or not. So there's a whole lot of missteps going on, and we don't pray for it. But if we don't take time and put our acts together as a government in Liberia, it will be worse than what we see in America. The thing with America is they have the resources. You do the election talking about paying each American $1,000. Liberia even got money. He even got money to even get the doctor talking about contact tracing. Dr. Falakin and started talking about they don't have money. The people should just go up and go trace people. We can't do that. We need to look for the money any and everywhere. Road project money, elections money. Because when the power here is very hard, there'll be no election. People closing schools. America is shutting down by the hour. That's true. And so if you don't take time, the same thing will happen over there and we'll not have the resources to fight. So thank you very much. Once I have a podcast, and every day we're making these suggestions, but it seems like nobody is listening in Liberia. Nobody is listening. Who is the president? All these doctors come and give the expert advices. They're not listening. People just talking outside the country, inside the country, and they're doing their own stuff. I know I'm the last caller. I really hope I come on soon, but that's okay. Thank you guys very much for everything.
Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Davina, make you have the last word for the night.
Oh, okay. So in parting, I just want to say thank you for the show. I enjoy it, but I wanted to close with this. I want to encourage everybody, whether home and abroad, to follow the CDC guidelines and as well as the WHO protocol or everything they're telling us out there. Practice self-care. We need full body, mind, and soul to be balanced. Also, if you're like me who wake up every morning and say, when will this ever end? I'm ready to go out there. I'm scared to go to the grocery store everywhere. I'm tired of being, in mandatory confinement. Then, talk to somebody you can trust about your feelings, or, just work around with you. And if you still feel anxious and, overwhelmed about the whole thing, contact our health practitioner, like a therapist. A lot of them are doing video therapy, and you can talk to a subject matter expert to help reduce your stress and everything. But finally, I also want to say, be prepared for the worst. Be prepared for the worst instead of being scared and all of that. We all need to be prepared for the worst. So that's all I have to say.
And that will be.
Thank you.
Dave, you want to say something?
No, just want to say thank you for letting us do this.
Same here.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, I want to say thank you to our panelists, of course, and also our viewers.
We are Liberia.
Thank you.
Liberia is our Liberia people. Liberia.